My name is Marin Cole. I'm 32 years old, and the night my father said, "We need to talk," I was standing in my parents' hallway with my coat still on, my keys still in my hand, and my whole family pretending they hadn't just built a courtroom in the living room. My mother was sitting on the sofa with tissues already folded in her lap, like she had rehearsed crying before I arrived. My younger sister, Brielle, was in the armchair by the window, wearing the soft cream sweater I had bought her last Christmas, looking wounded in a way that made my stomach turn. And my husband, Ronan, was standing behind her chair with both hands clasped together, staring at the carpet like it might open up and swallow him. My father stood in the center of the room. "Marin," he said quietly, "we need to talk." Now, if you're thinking I walked into that house completely innocent, with no idea why everyone looked like they were waiting for a funeral, let me stop you right there. I knew. I knew about Brielle and Ronan. I knew about the hotel receipts. I knew about the deleted messages. I knew about the afternoons he claimed to be visiting clients while his car sat 2 streets away from her apartment. And most importantly, I knew my family had already decided what they wanted from me. Not an apology, not an explanation. They wanted my silence. They wanted me to absorb the humiliation, forgive the betrayal, protect the family image, and somehow make it easier for everyone else to keep pretending they were decent people. But here's what they didn't know. The quiet daughter had stopped being quiet weeks ago. Before I tell you what I said in that room, you need to understand how we got there. Brielle and I were never treated like sisters. We were treated like a problem and a solution. She was the problem. I was the solution. When Brielle missed school because she felt overwhelmed, I was the one who brought her assignments home. When she failed her driving test 3 times and screamed at my father in the driveway, I was the one who calmed everyone down. When she dropped out of college after 1 semester because her roommate had bad energy, my parents called me cruel for asking whether she had a plan. That was always the word they used for me when I told the truth. Cruel. Not practical. Not honest. Not tired. Cruel. Brielle could lie, spend money she didn't have, wreck friendships, disappear for days, and still be described as sensitive. But if I set one boundary, if I asked one question, if I refused to clean up one mess, suddenly I was cold. I learned early that, in my family, being responsible didn't earn you respect. It earned you assignments. By the time I was 25, I had become the person everyone called when something broke. Broken car, broken lease, broken heart, broken bank account. Somehow, it always became my job. Then I met Ronan. He wasn't dramatic. He wasn't loud. He didn't walk into a room expecting everyone to clap. He was steady, gentle. The kind of man who noticed when I stopped talking and asked what I wasn't saying. I met him at a community fundraiser where I was volunteering after work. I was helping organize donation boxes, and he was trying to fix a broken projector with the serious concentration of a surgeon. He looked up, smiled, and asked if I knew anything about cables. I told him I knew enough to know he was holding the wrong one. He laughed, and somehow that became our first conversation. For the first time in years, I felt like somebody saw me as more than useful. Ronan didn't ask me to fix his life. He asked me about mine. He remembered small things. He brought me lemon tea when I had a sore throat. He sent me pictures of bookstores because he knew I liked old wooden shelves and handwritten signs. When I introduced him to my family, my mother cried because he was exactly the kind of man Marin deserves. My father shook his hand and said he was relieved I had found someone solid, and Brielle smiled at him for 3 seconds too long. I noticed it. Of course I noticed it. But I told myself not to be dramatic, because that's what women like me do. We see the red flag, then immediately start questioning whether the flag is really red or whether we're just tired. At first, Brielle acted normal around him. Normal for Brielle, anyway. She teased him, asked questions, laughed too loudly at his jokes. Then slowly, she started inserting herself into our marriage. She would text him instead of me about family dinners. "Ronan, can you remind Marin to bring dessert?" "Ronan, do you think Marin will be upset if I skip Sunday lunch?" "Ronan, you're better at explaining things. Can you talk to her for me? It bothered me, but not enough to fight about. At least, that's what I told myself." Then came the compliments. "Ronan, you're so patient. I don't know how Marin got so lucky. Ronan, you always know how to make people feel safe. Ronan, if I ever find a man half as good as you, I'll stop ruining my life." She said that last one at my birthday dinner while my parents laughed like it was cute. I didn't laugh. Ronan squeezed my hand under the table, and I wanted to believe that meant he understood. I wanted to believe he saw what she was doing and found it uncomfortable. But a few months later, his phone started facing down at dinner. That's how it began. Not with lipstick on collars or some dramatic confession, just a phone turned face down. Then came the late nights. Then the extra showers. Then the way he stopped telling full stories and started offering summaries. Work was fine. Traffic was bad. Just tired. If you've ever lived with someone who is hiding something, the silence changes before the person does. The house feels heavier. The air gets careful. Every normal sentence starts sounding like it has another sentence buried underneath it. I asked him once, "Is something going on?" He looked at me too quickly. "With what?" "With you." He smiled like I had said something adorable. "Maren, you're overthinking again." Again. That one word told me more than his whole answer. Because Ronan had never used my family's language before. He had never made me feel like my instincts were a flaw. But Brielle had. My mother had. My father had. And now my husband was starting to sound like them. That was the night I stopped asking and started watching. I checked phone records first. Not because I wanted to become that wife, but because I was tired of being the woman everyone fooled and then blamed for trusting them. There it was. Brielle's number. Late at night. Early morning. Lunch hours. Calls that lasted 2 minutes. Calls that lasted 47. Then I found the restaurant charge. 2 dinners at a place Ronan had told me was too expensive when I suggested it for our anniversary. Then the flower shop. Then the hotel parking garage. By the time I found the first message, I wasn't shaking anymore. I was calm. That scared me more than the betrayal. The messages were not poetic. They were not some tragic love story between 2 people fighting destiny. They were sloppy, selfish, embarrassing. Brielle calling me controlling. Ronan saying I had been distant. Brielle saying he deserved someone softer. Ronan saying he didn't want to hurt me, which is always a fascinating thing to say while actively hurting someone. I sat at the kitchen table that night with my laptop open, reading proof that my husband had been comforting my sister about how difficult it was to betray me. And somewhere between the 4th screenshot and the 2nd hotel receipt, something inside me finally went still. Not broken. Still. There's a difference. Broken means you don't know what to do next. Still means you do. The next morning, Ronan kissed my forehead before work and told me he loved me. I smiled. I said I loved him too. Then I waited until his car left the driveway, opened a folder on my laptop, and named it exactly what it was. Evidence. For the next 3 weeks, I became the easiest woman in the world to underestimate. I made coffee. I asked Ronan how work was. I brought pasta salad to my parents' house on Sundays. I listened while Brielle complained about being lonely and misunderstood, as if she wasn't spending her free time borrowing my husband like he was a sweater I wouldn't notice missing. And every time they mistook my calm for ignorance, I collected more. Screenshots. Receipts. Call logs. Bank statements. Security camera clips from the porch. A photo of Ronan leaving Brielle's building at 11:18 p.m. wearing the jacket I bought him for our first anniversary. But the affair itself wasn't the part that changed everything. It was what I found after. My parents knew. Not suspected. Not wondered. Knew. My mother had been texting Brielle things like, "Give him time. Maren is practical. She'll handle it better than most women." My father had sent Ronan a message that said, "If your feelings are real, the honorable thing is to be honest, but don't let Maren make this ugly. Don't let Maren make this ugly." That was almost impressive. They had built the fire, handed out matches, watched my marriage burn, and were already preparing to blame me for the smoke. I found out the full plan from my Aunt Verity, who had always been close to my mother, but had never quite learned how to keep secrets when someone gave her chamomile tea and acted concerned. We met at a bakery on a Wednesday afternoon. I told her Mom seemed stressed and asked if something was going on. Aunt Verity sighed like she had been waiting for permission. "Your parents are worried about you," she said. "About me? They think you're going to react badly when Brielle and Ronan tell you." I stirred my tea slowly. "When they tell me what?" Her face changed. Just a little. Enough. "Oh, sweetheart." And there it was. The sympathy people offer when they realize they walked into the wrong conversation carrying the truth in both hands. I let her keep talking. According to Aunt Verity, Brielle had told my parents she and Ronan were in love. Ronan had apparently cried in my father's garage and said he never meant for it to happen. My mother had decided the best solution was a gentle family conversation where everyone would support me through the transition. The transition. Like my husband was a rented apartment and my sister had simply decided to renew the lease under her name. I asked one question. What does everyone expect me to do? Aunt Verity looked uncomfortable. They just hope you won't punish Brielle. She's fragile right now. I laughed, so suddenly the woman at the next table looked over. Brielle is fragile? She says she's terrified of losing the family. That was the moment I understood. They were not afraid of losing me. They were afraid I would stop being useful. By Friday, I had hired a lawyer. By Monday, I had opened a new bank account. By Tuesday, I had separated every financial thread connecting me to Ronan. And by Thursday, I had learned something Ronan had carefully avoided mentioning for 2 years. The house was mine. Not emotionally. Not morally. Legally. When we got married, my grandmother had already left me the house in a trust. Ronan moved in after the wedding, and because I loved him, I let him call it ours. He paid for utilities sometimes. He changed the garage shelves. He chose the living room rug. But the deed never had his name on it. Neither did my grandmother's investment account. Neither did the emergency fund I had built long before him. Neither did the small consulting business I ran on weekends helping local nonprofits organize their finances. Ronan thought he was married to the dependable woman who kept calendars and remembered birthdays. He had forgotten he was also married to the woman who read every document before signing it. That mistake was about to become expensive. 2 days before the family meeting, my mother called. Marin, can you come over Sunday evening? Your father wants to talk. Brielle will be there too. And Ronan? Pause. Yes. Ronan too. How nice, I said. A full family gathering. My mother exhaled, probably relieved that I sounded calm. We just want everyone to feel safe. I looked at the folder on my desk. Printed copies. Legal papers. Photographs. A timeline so clean it looked like a corporate presentation. Don't worry, Mom, I said. I'll make sure everything is very clear. Sunday came quietly. That was the strange thing about life-changing days. The birds still sing. Coffee still brews. Your neighbor still drags trash bins to the curb like the world hasn't already cracked open. Ronan spent the morning acting nervous and affectionate. He asked if I wanted breakfast. He touched my shoulder when passing behind me. He said maybe after dinner we could take a drive and talk. I almost admired the performance. Almost. At 5:40 p.m., I changed into a black dress. The simple one my mother always said made me look too serious. I put on my grandmother's pearl earrings. I printed one final document, slipped everything into a leather folder, and walked downstairs. Ronan was waiting by the door. You look nice, he said. I know, he blinked. I smiled. The drive to my parents' house was silent except for the sound of Ronan tapping his thumb against the steering wheel. That nervous rhythm used to make me reach for his hand. This time, I let him tap. When we arrived, my father opened the door before we even knocked. That told me they had been watching from the window. Marin, he said, with the kind of tenderness men use when they're about to ask a woman to suffer politely. Come in. The living room was arranged exactly how I expected. My parents on the sofa. Brielle in the armchair. Ronan guided toward the love seat, close enough to me to look supportive, far enough to separate himself when needed. And one empty chair in the center. For me. Of course. I sat down slowly, placed my folder on my lap, and looked around the room. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then my father cleared his throat. Marin, there are some things in life that are painful, but avoiding them only makes the pain worse. That sounds rehearsed, I said. My mother flinched. Brielle looked down at her hands. Ronan whispered, Marin. I turned to him. You'll get your turn. My father's face hardened, just slightly. He was not used to me interrupting the script. We're trying to handle this with compassion. For whom? The room went quiet. My mother reached for her tissues. For everyone, she said softly. I nodded. Interesting. Please continue. Brielle finally looked up. Her eyes were red, but not from guilt, from anticipation. She had always cried early, so people would forget she caused the problem. Marin, she began, voice trembling. I never wanted to hurt you. That must have been inconvenient. Her mouth opened, then closed. Ronan leaned forward. This isn't her fault. And there it was, the first honest thing he had said all month. Because no, it wasn't only her fault. It was his too. My father raised a hand. Let Ronan speak. I sat back. Please. I'm fascinated. Ronan swallowed. Brielle and I developed feelings. We tried to fight it. We really did. But sometimes these things happen before people know how to stop them. These things, I repeated. Marin, I love you. I do. But what I feel for Brielle is different. My mother began crying harder, like she was the betrayed wife. Brielle whispered, "We didn't choose this." I looked at her then, really looked, at my little sister who had spent her whole life turning wants into emergencies, who had learned that if she cried loudly enough, someone else would surrender quietly enough, who had seen my happiness and mistaken it for something she could take. "You're right," I said. Her face softened with hope. "You didn't choose love. You chose entitlement." The room froze. My father sat straighter. "Marin, don't be cruel." I laughed once. There was that word again. Cruel. I opened my folder and placed the first stack of papers on the coffee table. "These are divorce papers, already filed." Ronan went pale. I placed the second stack beside them. "This is a notice from my attorney confirming that Ronan has 30 days to vacate my house." My mother stopped crying. "My house," I repeated, because I wanted everyone to hear the part they had overlooked. Brielle stared at the papers like they were written in another language. "You can't kick him out," she said. I tilted my head. "Why not? Are you planning to take him in?" Ronan looked at her. That was the first crack. Tiny, but beautiful. Because Brielle had wanted the romance, the secret messages, the stolen husband, the victory of being chosen. She had not wanted rent. She had not wanted bills. She had not wanted a man with no house, no access to my money, and no wife managing the boring parts of his life. My father stood. "This is unnecessary." "No," I said. "What was unnecessary was all of you sitting in this room pretending betrayal becomes noble when you discuss it as a family." "Marin," my mother whispered, "we were trying to protect you." I looked at her tissues, her soft voice, her practiced sadness. "No, Mom, you were trying to protect Brielle from consequences." Nobody answered, so I kept going. I spread the photographs across the table next. Ronan outside Brielle's apartment, Brielle getting into his car, the hotel parking receipt, the restaurant charge, the messages. Not all of them, just enough. My mother covered her mouth. My father stared at Ronan like betrayal had only become real now that it was printed on paper. Brielle's face had gone white. "How did you get those?" she whispered. I smiled. "That's your question?" Ronan reached for one of the papers, but I placed my hand over it. "No, you don't get to touch the evidence and pretend you're still in control." He pulled back. I turned to my parents. "I know about the meetings. I know about Dad telling Ronan not to let me make this ugly. I know about Mom telling Brielle I would handle it because I'm practical. I know Aunt Verity accidentally told me the whole little plan." My father's jaw tightened. "That was private family business." I stared at him. "I am family." The words landed harder than I expected. Not because they shocked them, because they didn't. That was the problem. In their minds, family meant Brielle's pain, Ronan's confusion, my father's embarrassment, my father's reputation. It had never meant me. I stood up, smoothing the front of my dress. "So here's what happens now. Ronan, my lawyer will contact you. You will sign the papers, or we can discuss your adultery, your financial dependency, and your use of marital funds in court." He looked like he might be sick. "Brielle," I continued, "you wanted my husband. Congratulations. You can have whatever is left after the divorce." She started crying. "Marin, please. No. One word. Clean. Calm. Final. I looked at my parents last, and you two can stop calling me to manage the emotional wreckage you helped create. I'm not available for that job anymore." My mother stood, trembling. "You're really going to walk away from your family?" I picked up my folder. "No, Mom. I'm walking away from people who only remembered I was family when they needed me to forgive them." Then I left. "Behind me," Brielle sobbed. Ronan called my name. My father said something sharp that I didn't bother hearing. For once, I didn't turn around. The next morning, Ronan came home to find half the closets empty and the locks scheduled to be changed by the end of the week. I didn't take everything, just what was mine, which legally and emotionally turned out to be almost all of it. He called 36 times that day. Then Brielle called. Then my mother. Then my father. By evening, I had so many missed calls that my phone looked less like a device and more like a confession. Ronan's messages started exactly how I expected. First, denial. "Marin, please don't make any permanent decisions while you're upset." Then guilt. "We built a life together." Doesn't that mean anything? Then blame. You shut me out. You made me feel invisible. That one almost made me laugh. Invisible. I had spent years making his appointments, helping polish his work presentations, remembering his mother's medication schedule, buying gifts for his nieces, keeping our home peaceful enough for him to feel successful. But sure, he was invisible. By day 3, the panic began. He realized my house was not our house. My savings were not our savings. My patience had not been permission. Brielle realized something too. A stolen man is much less romantic when he arrives with a duffel bag, legal trouble, and nowhere permanent to sleep. My cousin Alara told me Ronan stayed at Brielle's apartment for exactly 4 nights before they had their first screaming fight. Apparently, Brielle expected him to fight for their love, and Ronan expected her to have a plan. Neither of them had one. That was their problem. They had confused wanting something with being ready for it. 2 weeks after the confrontation, my father came to my office. Not called. Came. He stood in the reception area of the nonprofit where I worked, wearing his church shoes and the expression of a man who believed authority should still open doors. My assistant messaged me. "There's a man here saying he's your father. He looks upset." I almost told her to send him away. Then I decided I was tired of hiding from people who should have been ashamed to face me. I met him in the small conference room. He didn't hug me. I didn't offer. "Marin," he said, "this has gone too far." I sat across from him. I agree. It went too far when my sister slept with my husband and my parents helped schedule the emotional press conference. His face reddened. "We made mistakes." "No, you made choices." He looked down at his hands. "Your mother is devastated. I'm sure she is. She cries every night." I waited. He seemed confused by my silence. Old Marin would have softened there. Old Marin would have asked if Mom was eating. Old Marin would have carried everyone's guilt home like groceries. New Marin looked at the clock. "You have 10 minutes." My father stared at me like I had spoken a foreign language. "You've changed." "No, I stopped editing myself to make you comfortable," he sighed. "Brielle is not well." There it was, the real reason he came. Not because he missed me. Not because he understood. Because Brielle was suffering and the family emergency system had lost its main operator. "What do you want me to do?" "Talk to her." "No, she's your sister. She was my sister when she was sneaking around with my husband, too." His mouth tightened. "People make mistakes." "Dad, forgetting to buy milk is a mistake." "Betraying your sister for months is a lifestyle choice." He stood then, angry because guilt had failed. "You are being hard." I stood too. I learned from the best. That ended the meeting. 3 months passed. I moved into a smaller place downtown, not because I had to, but because I wanted a home that had never held Ronan's voice. I painted the bedroom green. I bought yellow curtains Brielle would have called ugly. I replaced the dining table where Ronan used to sit across from me, lying with a round one where my friends could gather without anyone feeling like they were on trial. I started sleeping through the night. That surprised me. I hadn't realized how exhausted I had been until peace felt unfamiliar. Ronan signed the divorce papers after my lawyer sent one final letter listing exactly what we were prepared to present in court. He included a handwritten note. "I will regret this for the rest of my life." I believed him. I just didn't care anymore. Brielle sent me a message once. "I know you hate me, but I miss you." I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it, not because I hated her. Because missing me was not the same as loving me. My mother tried sending old family photos, Christmas mornings, school plays, birthday cakes, images from years when I still believed being useful would eventually turn into being valued. I saved none of them. 6 months after that night, I hosted dinner at my new apartment. Not for relatives. For people who knew how to sit at my table without taking inventory of what they could use. My friend Tessa brought wine. My neighbor June made bread. My coworker Malik burned the roasted carrots and somehow made everyone laugh until we cried. At one point, while everyone was talking over each other in my kitchen, I stepped into the hallway and just listened. No tension. No performance. No one waiting for me to fix the mood. Just warmth. Simple, ordinary warmth. It almost broke me. Not because I was sad, because I finally understood how little I had been surviving on before. Later that night, after everyone left, I found a voicemail from my mother. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. "Marin, sweetheart. Your father and I were wondering if you might come for Sunday dinner sometime. Brielle won't be there if that makes it easier. We just miss you." I listened once. Then again. Then I deleted it too. Maybe someday I would answer. Maybe someday forgiveness would feel like freedom instead of another assignment. But not yet. Not because I was bitter. Because I was healing. And healing requires distance from the people who keep reopening the wound and calling it family. If you're listening to this on drama and revenge stories and you've ever been told to forgive someone just because they share your blood, remember this. Family is not a free pass to betray you. Love is not proven by how much pain you can tolerate. And being the strong one does not mean volunteering to be hurt over and over again. Sometimes the most powerful sentence you will ever say is not a speech. It is not an explanation. It is not a tearful confession in a room full of people who already chose sides before you arrived. Sometimes it is one word. No, no, I will not make this easier for you. No, I will not protect your reputation from your behavior. No, I will not call betrayal a mistake just because accountability makes you uncomfortable. My name is Maren Cole. I'm 32 years old. My father said, "We need to talk," after finding out my sister had been with my husband. But when I spoke, they finally learned the truth. I was not the daughter they could sacrifice anymore. I was the woman who had already saved herself.